So there's a new legal battle brewing, and this one, it goes right to the heart of what Bitcoin even is. And we're not talking small change here. We're talking hundreds of billions of pounds. The stakes, well, they literally could not be higher.
Yeah, just look at that number, over 911 billion pounds. That's the amount of damages being claimed in a lawsuit that honestly could completely reshape the whole crypto world as we know it.
So the entire case really boils down to this one kind of wild question. What if the Bitcoin you know, the BTC on all the exchanges, isn't the real Bitcoin? The lawsuit is basically claiming it's been changed so much from its original blueprint that it's a completely different thing. So let's dive in and unpack exactly what that means.
All right, to really get what this lawsuit is all about, we have to rewind. We're going all the way back to the beginning to what the court papers say was Bitcoin's original and crucially unchangeable mission.
So, according to this lawsuit, Bitcoin was never meant to be digital gold or some big speculative investment. Nope. Its main job, its whole reason for being, was to act like digital cash, for everyday stuff. Buying a coffee, splitting a bill, just simple payments, person to person.
And this right here, this quote, is the absolute linchpin of their whole argument. The claim is that Satoshi meant for the Bitcoin protocol to be locked in, set in stone from the get-go. The single idea that the rules were never ever supposed to be changed is everything. The whole case rests on it.
So the filing lays out what it sees as the original rules of the game. First, a public ledger you could trace and audit, so everything was above board. It was about privacy, sure, but not total anonymity. And the design was simple. Nodes were miners, and they all competed to create blocks and secure the network. But here's the kicker. The lawsuit argues the system was built from day one to handle huge numbers of tiny little payments, micropayments, and even complex programmable stuff.
Okay, so if that was the original vision, what the heck happened? Well, the lawsuit lays out this timeline, a series of events that it claims basically hijacked the protocol and veered it off into a totally different direction.
So here's the play-by-play of what the lawsuit calls the Great Divergence. It starts in 2011, when Satoshi hands the keys to the kingdom, basically, over to a developer named Gavin Andresen. But by 2016, he's had that control taken away from him. Then come two massive changes to the protocol. First up is SegLit in 2017, which messed with how transaction data is stored. Then, in 2021, Taproot comes along changing things up for privacy and scripting. Now, the BTC developers would tell you these were just essential upgrades, right? For scaling, for better features. But the lawsuit? It paints them as unauthorized changes that completely broke the original blueprint.
And this is what the lawsuit says is the result of all those changes. The original idea of on-chain, traceable cash got swapped out. Instead, the focus shifted to off-chain stuff like the Lightning Network, more anonymity, and, treating Bitcoin less like cash and more like a speculative asset, like digital gold.
Okay, so with all that backstory in place, now we can really get into the nitty-gritty of the legal claims being thrown at the BTC developers.
The first big one is something called passing off. The argument is pretty simple. By keeping the name Bitcoin for this changed system, the developers are basically pulling a fast one on the public. The Coca-Cola analogy is perfect. It's like if you changed the secret formula but still sold it in that classic red can. The lawsuit says, hey, that's not the same drink anymore.
And building on that, we get to an even heavier charge, fraudulent misrepresentation. This one is serious. It's not just saying they were misleading. It's alleging they knew the system was totally different, but they deliberately kept the Bitcoin name to fool investors in the entire market.
And believe it or not, it doesn't even stop there. They're also throwing the book at them with claims of breaking UK consumer protection laws. They argue the changes made it easier to launder money by upping the anonymity. And they even bring up the UK's Computer Misuse Act, accusing the developers of essentially hacking their own system.
So you're probably wondering, who exactly are they suing? Well, the lawsuit is aimed at a group they're calling BTC Core, and they're making the pretty bold claim that this group acts as a legal partnership. Let's see how they try to prove that.
Okay, so this is a really interesting legal angle. The filing says that under UK law, these developers aren't just a loose group of volunteers. They're a business partnership. It says they tick two boxes. First, they're working together, in common, to manage the protocol. And second, and this is a big one, they're doing it for profit. The lawsuit alleges that all those big payments they get from companies like Blockstream aren't just donations, they're income.
All right, so what's the end game here? What does the lawsuit actually want? Well, it really comes down to two things: a mind-boggling amount of money and a complete rewriting of what Bitcoin legally means.
And here we are, back at that unbelievable number. Over 900 billion pounds. That's what they're claiming in damages for the financial harm they say was caused by all this misrepresentation. But where on earth does a number like that come from?
Well, the calculation all comes down to a massive gap in value. See, the whole premise of the lawsuit is that a different cryptocurrency, Bitcoin SV or BSV, is the real original Bitcoin. So they calculate the damages by looking at the huge difference between BSV's price, which is pretty low, and the much, much higher price of what they call the imposter BTC.
But really, this goes way beyond the money. What they also want is for a court to officially declare that the developers were misleading people. They want an injunction, a legal order, to stop them from calling BTC Bitcoin ever again. And the ultimate prize? Getting BSV legally recognized as the one and only true Bitcoin.
You know, when you strip it all away, this whole case brings up a really fascinating philosophical puzzle. When does something change so much that it's not the original thing anymore? It's that old thought experiment, the ship of Theseus. If you replace every plank of wood on a ship, is it still the same ship? At what point does a technology, after so many changes, stop being what it started as? And that's the real question at the heart of this 91 billion pound fight for the soul of Bitcoin.